Media is now allowed in the chamber.
All right.
Chair recognizes Mr. Adams. Regarding Senate Bill 1035, relating to expanding viewpoint diversity at Southern Methodist University. Gentlemen, that's 3 minutes for his opening speech.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Good to be, back in front of the podium. All right, so this is a bill on viewpoint diversity. Whenever it comes to diversity in universities, there's always discussion of we want more racial and gender diversity, as we absolutely should. When fewer viewpoints are represented in academia, that's when we have a problem where perspectives are not considered. That's where assumptions go unchallenged, and academia suffers as a result. One place where we haven't talked about viewpoint diversity so much is lack of conservatives in academia. And that's an enormous problem. So increasingly over the past few decades, the number of conservatives and centrists in academia has declined. And that does us no favor. So I think currently now less than 10% of academics are actually conservative. So what the problem happens there is you have, for example, when a liberal academic does a study on whether conservatives or liberals are more likely to be racist, you're going to get the answer that conservatives are absolutely more racist. Whenever you flip that, you're going to get the opposite result. And that brings us no closer to the truth when we do have a partisan filter for how we organize our studies and how we actually decide to interpret our data. So I'm the president of College Democrats. The reason why I am a Democrat is because I believe that more information out there currently supports the position of the Democratic Party. But there is an issue when in academia there is when there's a slant towards one ideological viewpoint. And it's not as though conservatives or liberals are more inclined than the other to say respect science or something like that. For example, when you actually consider countries like Japan or some countries in Europe, you actually have more conservatives that have a higher regard for science than liberals in those countries. The reason is in Europe and Japan, hot button issues include things such as GMOs and nuclear power. And scientists overwhelmingly say that nuclear power is safe. More scientists actually say GMOs are safe than say that global warming is a man-made problem. And so when those are hot button issues in, say, Japan or in Europe, and and science supports that, then you actually have the liberals that are angry because their viewpoints are respected. It's the opposite issue in the United States, where we actually have global warming and other things as big issues in science. So it's not that one side is necessarily more inclined towards science or data or facts more than the other. It's just that people don't like it when their viewpoints are challenged. That's why I think that when it comes to social science especially, we do have an issue where we do want more representation from both sides of the aisle and from the center, so we can account for biases and we can check for assumptions. Otherwise, we have groupthink, and that brings us no closer to the truth.
Are there any questions? Mr. Jones.
Can you just kind of highlight for me what this bill is doing?
Sure. So the idea of this bill is we want the university faculty to support. We want them to support diversity when it comes to their faculty. We want the faculty who are diverse in terms of their ideological orientation. We also want the university to embrace the Chicago principles of free expression. So, for example, when it comes to the instance last year where we had an issue where a student almost shut down this program called, I think that was the Young Americans for Freedom or Young Americans for Liberty. And so things such as that, when we do have funding or stuff like that withheld from a group, we wouldn't want stuff like that to happen. So it's more that we want the Senate to support the idea that we do want free expression and free exchange of ideas, and we also want the university's administration to embrace that as well.
Senator Kosen?
Could you explain the Young Americans for Freedom incident?
Sure. So last year, the Young Americans for Freedom, they wanted to bring Ted Cruz's father, Rafael Cruz, to the university. He has said some very negative things about the LGBT community, and as a result, one of the senators, he wanted that program to be defunded, and not the whole thing, but just about portion that would allow him to come to the university. So there was a bit of a spat, and it lasted for I think like half an hour or so, lasted for some time, and in the chamber, and so eventually that was turned down, and the person was Rafael Cruz was able to come. But I mean, very nearly had an experience last year where because of some of the unpopular ideas, they were almost kept from coming to the university. And my point has been that, for example, I'm a liberal. I'm pro-choice. So some conservatives, for their reasons, believe that being pro-choice or abortion is murder. So if I wanted to bring someone from Planned Parenthood to the university, well, they have a right to strike that down as well. So freedom of expression works both ways, and that's why I actually thought that, and we were able to take that down.
So that'll be sure.
So I think this is interesting. I was looking at the Chicago policies, I guess,
Right.
whatever they're called. How are those? Do you have any specifics as to how those are different than what we actually have? Because it sounds very similar.
They are very similar, and it's very fortunate that the Southern Methodist University has a strong tradition of heterodoxy. We do have a strong tradition of having both sides represented. For example, in political science, I haven't had that issue. You've seen it in social science, that's more in this university. But I mean, in general, that is not as big an issue at the university. But I do think it's important that we clarify that, and I think it is important that we actually make a stand for heterodoxy. So it's not an issue today, no, but is it possible that in the future people might try to challenge it? Absolutely. So I do think the university should clarify that and make a stand for the viewpoint diversity.
Okay. Follow-up question?
Sure.
Awesome. So it seems like, have you considered the possibility that maybe going through with a resolution to make the university change policy might not be as effective as working on like a student body level? Because it sounds like the university policies are more or less what you're trying to implement, and maybe it's just a different viewpoint or use of those policies on a student body level that might be more effective.
Sure. So I think the issue is that we want I want the university to implement it for student government to stand behind these ideas and these principles. I do think it's important for us to say, excuse me, that these are principles we support. We support viewpoint diversity, and we want all sides to be represented. So I think it's important for us as a chamber to support that, because the university does listen to us, the administration listens to us, and if we don't say something, and someone later comes along the line and then makes very vocal demands in the other direction, then I think there is an issue there.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes. So I was kind of wondering whether what you're looking for really is tangible or intangible. Are you looking for like the university to make a statement? Are you looking for a constitutional change? Are you looking for just a general cultural change? Are you looking for something that's like tangible or intangible?
Sure. So there are two things. One is that I do want the university to make a statement. I do want the university to make a similar statement to what happened at the University of Chicago, where they did say they will stand behind free expression and against political correctness. The other is that I do want a change when it comes to a culture in the faculty and academia, and I would say that probably is a little less tangible, but we do want a statement to be made for that for that to be able to happen. And I mean, if we have a chamber, if we're silent, then I don't think we'll get any closer to that.
Sorry, follow up.
Sure.
Along with that statement, do you want there to be like some sort of change in the constitutional, like overarching statement of the university's mission, or is it just a statement?
I think in terms of the university's mission, that I'll probably leave to faculty or the administration to decide. But those are principles that I do think it's important for us as a chamber to say that the university should adhere to, and at least make the statement for the president and the administration that these are some things that we want.
Mr. Costa?
So my question is, how do you draw the line between things that are and aren't acceptable on a college campus, and then as an extension, who determines that?
Sure.
And then who audits that person?
Right. In terms of what is not acceptable, so I think there are certain things that we absolutely should not accept. For example, I mean, we shouldn't accept things such as actual physical bodily harm, and those kinds of things. I don't think we should accept someone calling another person an N-word, for example. But what I do think we should accept is that when there are legitimate disagreements in academia, I think those have to be respected. And I mean, if we have, of course, you know, as a liberal, I absolutely don't support him or like his ideas, but someone like Milo Yiannopoulos, if someone like that wants to come, then I think that, you know, he should be able to, you know, do a shtick or whatever, and, you know, carry on. But I don't think that, you know, when it comes to things like that, where it's like borders on entertainment, and I also, you know, you might have some ideas that may have be backed by some academics. You know, I think that should be able to be represented, but I mean, things that are explicitly just for, you know, just for, to, you know, diminish someone's rights or actually cause real physical bodily harm, I don't think those should be accepted.
Hey, follow. How do you prevent bias from entering these events?
Sure. So I think we have bias now when too many folks are already on you know on the side of political correctness, or where you have too much academia in on one side. When you actually have more diversity, that's when you can actually check for bias and prevent you know sides from exercising on that bias.
Mr. Cantrell.
I guess what I would just ask of you, can you, outside of, you know, that one individual,
Right.
Was that estimated one individual that,
Last year, yeah.
outside of the one individual, that, I mean, obviously you can't control people and their opinions, and outside of the statistic of, what our ratio of, is, like, political bias our professors are, because, I mean, you can't not hire someone because of their political
Right.
bias. Can you give us some more examples of what you've seen on our SMU campus that has prevented this, or I guess led towards this political bias?
Sure. So there aren't statistics specifically for SMU. There are national statistics, and that's what I was referring to earlier. In terms of just SMU in general, as a political science major, that has that isn't a problem in political science so much, as so far as I've seen. I have seen it a lot when I have taken classes outside of political science. I don't want to call it a professor. You know, I don't want that to be an issue. But I mean, I have seen instances where professors had very, very clear ideological leanings, and it was very, very clear where they were coming from. And they are all coming from the same direction. So I think that is an issue when you have, you know, when folks in a position of authority are telling you that, you know, this is exactly what's right, this is, you know, how it should be. When, I mean, in many cases, you know, it's, there's been a decline in viewpoint diversity, so that you, over the past few decades, so I mean, you are getting biased information, which I think is inappropriate.
I think, did you already have this call? No? Okay.
Okay. Follow up to that, or just your point, is I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I kind of understand is that, you know, professors aren't supposed to specifically impose, it's supposed to be a place of free thinking. Wouldn't that be put upon the student, because obviously faculty isn't going to be coming and monitoring other faculty, wouldn't that be something that's supposed to be imposed on students? Because that is already something that is enacted in our constitution.
Sure. So you're right that we're not, you know, supposed to, we're not supposed to, you know, advocate for, we're not supposed to discriminate based on how they're hired and whatnot. But I mean, when it is, you know, very clear where direction the faculty is coming from, and we're in a position where we're the folks that are learning, we don't necessarily have the knowledge or the resources to, you know, give a substantial challenge to professors. Not everyone can do that. So the issue then becomes that, you know, there's this great disparity between some folks who do have the authority and they do have, you know, the power to give the grades and whatnot, and you do have other folks the students that might have more diverse viewpoints, but you know, they don't have that same level of power. So you would want the professors to have equal footing, and so that you are getting exposed to multiple different viewpoints when you are in your major or whatever you're studying.
Okay, so we are approaching the end of the senator's time. However, we still have several people waiting to ask questions of the author. I'm inclined to let questions continue. However, if anyone disagrees with that, you're welcome to raise a point of order, and I will sustain the point of order. And then if anybody wants us to continue to hear questions, they may make a motion to extend time. But as it stands, I'm just going to let questions continue unless somebody said, I would encourage those to not exercise their ability to ask follow-up, just for the sake of time. Chair recognizes Ms. Cox.
Are you aware that through our weekly Black Diversity meetings, there's already a plan in place to increase faculty diversity as well as faculty diversity training? And so if this is something that you feel should be included in the training process, how to deal with students who are at the other end of your political spectrum, I think that's something that you and I can discuss, and we can bring it up to President Turner at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
If you're interested.
Absolutely. Just let me know, we know where you can meet. Yeah, awesome.
Ms. Cowan.
So you're saying that you want student government and administration obviously to support and, you know, enforce the Chicago principles,
That's right.
but how would, that be accomplished, I guess? Like, are you saying that there should be some sort of, like, punishment or something for someone who doesn't follow these guidelines, or what? Like, what's your opinion on how these would be enforced?
Sure. So we need to make the statement that these are the principles we support, and when there are instances where some students may try to prevent someone from a different viewpoint coming to speak, we should not succumb to that. We should allow people with a diverse viewpoint to come to the university. So this is an issue that has happened in other universities across the country, where people with unfashionable viewpoints, because most campuses do lean towards the left, they have been disinvited or not permitted to come. And there have been times where even very, very liberal speakers have not been able to come. For example, Bill Maher was nearly disinvited from the University of California, Berkeley. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is very liberal, but she has been a critic of Islam, she was disinvited from a university. So I don't think that's appropriate at all. I do think that a university is a place where you should learn. I don't think there should be punishments, but I do think that when there are instances where students do try to block other students' freedom from having a speaker come over and express themselves, I think that's the university should ignore that and maybe issue a statement to the students if they feel better. But I don't think that the university should be in the business of punishing or allowing students to disinvite speakers that they don't agree with.
Mr. Rapone.
Yeah, I'm going to be insisting here, but, so, I mean, I just don't understand the entirety of the Chicago principles. And
Sure.
I doubt anyone in this country does. And so that's why I feel like this is a little bit lacking in substance for something that we're really asking them to support if we don't actually understand it ourselves. So is there anything that we could do to that end where we could really promote the understanding of the entire chamber so we could all be on the same footing in endorsing this to the administration?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, fortunately for you guys, this bill won't be coming up for 3 weeks for vote because I do have something going on next week. So you have 3 weeks if you want to look up stuff about Chicago principles or issues that have taken place on other campuses or the issue of viewpoint diversity. So I would absolutely recommend looking into that. And if there are things that I could, and questions I could specifically answer or things I can send you, then please reach out to me and I'll help you the best I can.
Follow up really quickly. Would you mind if this gets sent out to us? Would you mind just attaching a link to Chicago principles?
Sure.
Okay.
Ms. Samuel.
Really quickly, because you cite political diversity,
Yes.
is there any concern that later just piece of legislation is passed would use to justify bringing speakers who explicitly state, I guess, harmful statements towards, for example, the LGBT community? So
Right.
are you concerned about that?
Sure. Yeah. So say if we have a speaker that actively says that LGBT people, for whatever reason, should not have rights, then I think it's very important that you have the freedom to bring in your own speaker that challenges that. I think that what you could do is try to force an organization that is bringing that person over to a question and answer session so you can directly challenge that speaker. But I do think that when you do sweep ideas under the rug, that's when those ideas will have to fester and you actually see a backlash. And I think that is partially the reason why we do have an alt-right is because the campus left and left orthodoxy has created a backlash on the other end. So when you do tell a group of people that they're the source of the world's problems, then you're going to have an equal and opposite reaction. So I think that when those people are there, then there should be an opportunity for them to be challenged, but I don't think that, there should be an opportunity to just sweep them under the rug, because I do think that is destabilizing in the long run.
Mr. Rainey.
Pass.
Ms. Linsky.
So I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think a lot of the questions are coming up because there's, like Spencer had said, there's not like substance. And what I've heard you citing is that's happening at other universities. Have you considered maybe doing research with both students and faculty and staff, and maybe coming back and putting that in this legislation so we can see like what exactly is changing? Because I know I personally haven't seen
Right.
a need for this, and I think that's where a lot of the questions are coming from.
Sure, that can be done.
Ms. Klein.
And I think that what, Ms. Lindsay said will kind of clarify this, but is there anything in particular that motivated you to say that we should change from the policies we already have to this? Because I've kind of been looking at that and looking at our policies, and I don't see a huge difference unless it's in the way you would want to enforce it or implement it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so thankfully, SME is a campus where it has not been as big of an issue. Doesn't mean it won't be an issue in the future, and there won't be folks that, try to have that become an issue. So, yeah, I can absolutely cite instances other universities. And in terms of philosophical difference, this won't be a big difference for SME just because we adhere to these principles for the most part rather closely. But there have been some instances in the past, in the last year, in which this has, come close to being an issue. So we wouldn't want this to, be an issue in the future where it's, where people are actively disinvited from coming, or we do have a hyperpartisan faculty. So is this an enormous issue at SME? No, but is this supposed to prevent that from happening in the future? Absolutely. And I also want this to be a model for other universities, just the way the University of Chicago has been, so that where the University of Chicago did choose to stand for free expression and free speech, which is something SME comes close to already doing, but I think that we should formalize that.
Mr. Healy.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Chicago principal right now, and are you aware that earlier you were saying how you wouldn't want to allow like someone to just like call another person the N-word? And like it seems like in Chicago principals there's a lot of gray area regarding like what a person can say, because here it says that there are very narrow exceptions to the freedom of expression, and it's vitally important that the exceptions never be used. But I'm just concerned if, like, I'm looking at the SMU policy right now, and it seems that for like racial and ethnic harassment and all those, I feel like the policy is already good, and the Chicago principles may be a tad too broad and give a little bit too much gray area to those areas of free speech.
Right. That's absolutely understandable. So when it comes to the Chicago principle of free speech, the idea essentially is that you would want academic discourse to not be blocked, and you do want you want a free exchange of ideas would have to be facilitated with rules that allow greater freedom. So would these necessarily come in contention with the university policies where there are certain things that you can't do for if you say those things specifically for the purpose of diminishing someone's rights? Then when it comes to that, then of course you would not want that to happen. But when it comes to specifically academic discourse, then that's one place where, as a university, we do have an obligation to facilitate a free exchange of ideas, even if we do find that disagreeable. But it has no practical value in terms of academic discourse. So there's no reason for us to say it, or so no, I wouldn't. We can modify this and we can amend that if if you're concerned that it could be an issue. But that's as it already stands. I doubt that will be an issue.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that adopting the
Mr.
principle.
Healy, if you have a follow-up question,
yeah.
stand and request a
It's not
follow-up.
really a question. So.
What's up?
It's not really a question.
Okay, well then it'd be out of order.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adams. We will see this as old business next chamber, and I suspect there will be a motion to conclude. Yes, Mr. Simpson. I apologize, I didn't see that. You recognized briefly.
Thank you. So I have a concern about line 79, the beta 2, the way it's worded. Isn't that essentially taking away people's right to protest?
absolutely not. So the thing is, the way that, these rights are supposed to be envisioned is, you have the right to do, everything, that you want, so long as it does not infringe on someone else's right. So you absolutely have the right to protest. What you don't have the right to do, so you can protest and express your own free speech, but what you don't have the right to do is withhold someone else to do the same. So, you absolutely have the right to protest, but, if the protest, obstructs, from the event from happening or from ideas being exchanged, then that's something, we just